Hello, everyone. We are here with the Adoption as an Option presentation with Sarah Lanza and
Sky.
Sky.
Brannon.
All right. Thank you for watching, and I hope that this information is very helpful for you to share adoption as an alternative to anything else that someone might be thinking. And thank you, Sarah, for joining us today. And let's go ahead and begin.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so share with me just a little bit about like who each of you are and your role here. Is this a training or?
Yes, this is really a training for myself and Nancy and Selena, who will be watching this, but also we wanted to share it with volunteers.
Okay.
So Cherie is here because she's also thinking of volunteering with us. And
one day.
and we're excited. She's going to be working on the Embrace Grace program as well.
Oh.
So that's something fun too.
Oh, one of our recent birth moms went through that program and they really loved it.
Yeah, but we as a center, we know about adoption, but with Nancy and Selena just joining us, it's a brand new topic for them. So getting that information on how to share about adoption is very important to them too.
Great. Awesome. So one of the things that I like, well, all kind. Sorry, I always dive in. I'll do more of an introduction. So, I am the director of Adoption Center of San Diego. Adoption Center of San Diego has been around since 1986, and I have been the director for coming on 3 years now. Prior to me, it was someone named Sarah Jensen, who some people might know who are going to be watching. And really, Adoption Center of San Diego was one of the organizations that made an early decision that adoption should be open. And so the previous director thought, you know what if we just do adoptions in San Diego? Like, what if we keep it local? That way they can truly be open, because how could adoption be open if you're facilitators in Texas and your birth mom's in California and you're in New York, couples in New York. So that's what's been happening ever since. And so we really, one of the big differences, or one of the big things about that Adoption Center of San Diego specifically does, is we really only work with couples who are open to fully open adoptions. And we're going to share more about what that looks like, because sometimes that thought is like, what's an open adoption? How does that work? How is that best? And so we'll explain all of that. And then the birth mom has the option to choose whatever feels best for her, whatever level of openness feels best for her. And so because I think it is best to hear it directly from a birth mom, Sky decided to come with me today. I love bringing birth moms to our presentations because I can share about adoption all day long, but when you're actually hearing it from someone who has lived it, who has done it, who is telling you how it feels for her, then it's just a greater impact to hear that. And Sky has a beautiful story, and is loves sharing her stories, an advocate for adoption. So that's who Adoption Center is. We work with a limited amount of couples at a time. The reason that we do that is because we're not like in this for big business. There are 2 million couples on a waiting list throughout the country who are hoping to adopt. What are the statistics right now? Close to 1 million abortions annually. And less than 1% of women in crisis pregnancy or unplanned pregnancy choosing adoption for their baby. So what if those women who are choosing abortion, chose adoption or chose parenting? Either would be wonderful, and that would obviously greatly change those numbers. And so often when we do presentations like this, we have people come up to us afterwards and say, I had an abortion and I regret my abortion and I didn't know adoption was an option. So sometimes it's easy for us as pro-lifers who are so focused on wanting to make sure that the child's life is saved, to talk about, to make it seem as though there's 2 options. There's parenting or there's abortion. But that's not the case. There is a third option, and it's not for everyone, obviously, and we never push one option or another. But if a woman doesn't feel like she's in a safe place to even express that that's something that she might be interested in, then we're failing her, Even sometimes I will have women call, especially prior to my being a director of Adoption Center. Now it's more obvious where I stand on adoption, but prior to that, I was the director of a maternity home in Escondido called the Lamb of God Maternity Home. And people would almost like feel me out first to see how I felt about adoption. And then once they knew I was pro-adoption, they're like, okay, good. No one's been a safe person to tell that to. Here's what I want to do, because there's a lot of criticism and stigma attached to it, which is part of what we want to discuss today. So your roles as the front line of women who are in crisis or unplanned pregnancies is not to manage the whole adoption conversation. Just like I wouldn't want to handle lots of what you all do with women who come in. The expectation wouldn't be that all of a sudden after this conversation you feel totally equipped, but you call me right away. Pregnancy care centers all over the county will say, hey, she's going in for her ultrasound right now. She's open to talking to you. When she gets out, can she call? Like, they set me up to make sure I'm available so I can pull over if I'm at a grocery store or get off the other line, just make sure I'm in a place to do that. And then I can have that conversation with her because I'm equipped to do so. But there is kind of that entry point that you want to come into with the woman where you're setting it up in a place where she feels comfortable to at least take that next step. And one of the biggest things is our language. We always say, words matter. The words we use matter. And I have some handouts that I'll leave here and give to you all. Some centers put this on their fridge, in their break room, so they just remember the positive versus negative adoption language. But the biggest thing to remember is that, and the biggest language that we hear used wrongly and correctly is, I know someone once who gave up their baby. So that is not positive adoption language. So you're in a crisis room. I don't know the exact jobs that you each do, but you're doing an ultrasound or you're bringing someone into the counseling room and you say, so have you ever considered giving away your baby? Like, no, that's how is that going to make her feel? Have you ever thought about giving up your baby? And even sometimes birth moms use that language because it's just sometimes what they think that it is, or what they think that they're supposed to use, but it's placing your child for adoption. Have you ever considered making an adoption plan for your child? Tell me a little bit about what you know about adoption. Oh, I know about adoption. When I was 5, I was taken from my parents. My mom was extremely abusive. My dad was in jail. And then I was adopted in a bunch of times. Okay, well, that's not what we're talking about. That is foster care. So being able to help her differentiate what foster care is versus what adoption is, private adoption is. Or I'm scared of adoption because I've lost 3 other kids to the system. We get that often. And then when we're able to explain the empowerment in this, what if you had a choice? What if you picked the couple? What if you had a forever relationship with your child and the family? Oh, that I can do. That's very different. I was just at a hospital here in Chula Vista a couple of weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago now, and the birth mom had lost some other children to the system, and CPS was right there outside the door waiting for me to make sure things went through as they were supposed to. And she was like, I feel like such a good mom right now. Mm-hmm. She's like, because I know where my baby's going. Like, I chose them. Like, my baby is good. She was like, the other 2 pregnancies and deliveries, I didn't feel like a good mom because I didn't know how I was going to feed or take care of her, where we were going to go. We didn't have stable housing. I knew CPS was going to be at my door, and she's like, I'm good. Like, and it was just really beautiful, So it really is empowering for women. And sometimes we have to have the wisdom to help walk through that journey. Like, what is this actually going to look like? Is there a chance that you would lose this child to the system? How does that feel for you? Do you want that to be different? So that's one way that adoption could happen. And then there's this whole other, and really more common, which people don't think that it is, but more commonly, we're working with women who say, I know I could do this. CPS isn't going to be involved at all. I'm doing a great job parenting my other child, but my child deserves a father. I want my child to be in a 2-parent home, or I want to pour into my child that I have. We're struggling, but we're finally getting to a good place. Sky's going to share more about, her story there. And I think this will really set me back and not be fair to either one of my children. And I think this is the most loving choice I can make for both. Or I don't even know who the dad is and it wasn't intentional, and yet there's couples out there who would do anything, and I was devastated to find out I was pregnant. You know, so women make the decision for a million different reasons, and they're all right if that's her decision. And there's never any judgment, and that's really hard because women do share with me a lot that a lot of people have a lot to say about their decision, you know. Why would you do that? When I was 18, I got pregnant and I figured it out, and so could you. Well, we don't think a birth mom's going to harm her baby. That's not the problem, you know. But we have to allow her to make whatever choice, trust what she wants in it, and allow her to make that choice. I could go like on and in lots of different areas, and I want to open this up to conversation, but I think Sky sharing her story will also bring up questions and help you understand the process, and I'll kind of interject just so we know like the flow of how it goes.
Yeah. Do you mind if I get some water real fast?
Oh yeah,
Let me bring that to you.
Thank you. Like, I got here in such a hurry, but it looks like I'm in the right place because I've got the matching purple.
I was thinking that.
Were
I
you?
love the color.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at your shirt. I'm like, okay, she's purple. I'm in the right place. Thank you.
So, we haven't done this in a while.
I know. I'm like out of touch a little bit.
Just with COVID, we haven't been invited into as many, you know, in-person meetings, and kind of switching things to Zoom. And then I still have done many of these, but you've been quite.
Yeah, I'm like, gosh, a year and a half ago we were on fire.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have had the pleasure of working with Sarah since 2018. And I have had the even bigger pleasure of wearing the crown of birth mom since 2019. But, let's see. So I guess things go back to 2018 is where my story really begins. I was fleeing a very dysfunctional and abusive relationship. After leaving that relationship, I found out that I was pregnant. I was already a single mom of a 5-year-old at the time. And when I found out that I was pregnant, it was devastating. It was the last thing that I thought was going to happen. And things kind of had snowballed down from there. I knew from the moment I found out that I was pregnant that I was not in the position to parent. That would not have been fair to my son, and that would not have been fair to the baby or myself. And I knew that abortion absolutely was not an option for me. That kind of narrowed it down to adoption. I didn't know what adoption was. I didn't know that there was different levels to adoption or even openness. So I had reached out to Adoption Center of San Diego in a hotel room because I was homeless at the time. And that had already set the tone to where there's just absolutely no way that I could parent this baby. I didn't know what my future looked like. When I had reached out to Adoption Center of San Diego, the previous facilitator, Sarah Jensen, and I spoke on the phone for an hour and a half early in the morning, and we cried. I cried. She cried with me. And she had put a seed of information in me that my imagination just absolutely bloomed to these wonderful possibilities and these loving moments. And I knew that at that point that open adoption was going to be it for me. And even then, I wasn't sure at what level of openness I was even wanting. I had thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just do like annual letters. Annual letters works for me because it's the least amount of contact that I'll have, but at least I know that my baby will be good. And the more I began working with the adoption centers, and as time went on, naturally as a mother, I grew to love the baby, and I had my son to think about. And I knew that I definitely wanted more of a relationship than annually. Later on in my pregnancy, about 6 months into it, I had moved from a hotel room to the East County Transitional Living Center. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. Okay, you are. So you know that it's a faith-based program, and along with choosing adoption, that program gave me the opportunity to completely transform my life, transform my son's life, and it was one of the biggest blessings. I'm just trying to...
You want to tell the story? Of...
I was like, is that...
It's fun.
It's fine, okay.
It's like not crucial.
This is like her favorite part of the whole story. There's like
I saw your wheels, like, do I tell this?
I know, I'm like, because there's so many different levels to my story that, like, gosh, I could be here for several hours, and it's just, there's a lot to it, a lot of different layers. So when I moved to East County Transitional Living Center, the director of family services, James Marino, had brought me into his office, and he was like, hey, you're the girl looking to adopt. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. He's like, do you mind having a conversation with me in my office real quick? I'm like, sure, that's fine. So we go sit in his office, and he's telling me about his friend who he's really good friends with, and he said, she's always told me that if there's a girl looking to adopt, to like keep your ear out and let me know. He's like, would you mind talking with her? I'm like, well, I'm already working with Adoption Centers of San Diego, but I'll entertain a conversation and a free lunch. Like, that works for me. So this woman and I, we go to Chipotle, and we sit and we talk for like 3 hours. We had an immediate chemistry. I absolutely was like obsessed with her. I loved her already, and I didn't even know her.
And you guys are twins.
Yeah, we're literally like, we could be in the same family for sure. I mean, well, I'll hold that. So by the end of the lunch, she hands me a business card, and it's for Adoption Centers of San Diego, Sarah Jensen. And I'm like, you're working with Sarah? I'm working with Sarah. I've been working with Sarah for 3 months. And she's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, yeah, gosh. And we totally just had a moment where we're like, hello. So bizarre, right? So I like could not stop thinking about her. I was completely obsessed with her. And the following week, I ended up getting my profiles for this baby's family. Not this baby, but I'm like reliving this whole story. I haven't told it in so long, and I felt like it was so real for a second. So I get the profiles, and I'm flipping through, and there is Scott and Molly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the woman I had lunch with, his name was Molly. So I'm like, there's Scott and Molly's. I'm like, what do I do? Do I still continue to read all of the profiles, or am I going to be just them? Well, I put theirs in the very back, and I had to read through all of them to know that I made the best choice, regardless. So I narrowed it down to obviously Scott's and Molly's and another couple. And I sat on it, I prayed on it, I weighed on it, and pros and cons. I could not get Molly out of my head. I loved her from the moment I met her. And I knew it was going to be them. So a few days later, we had a meeting at the Adoption Center office with Scott and Molly to let them know that I chose them, and hopefully they were going to choose me too, me and my son and I. And it was a beautiful meeting. We cried, and we were just so happy, and just the love was so authentically real. From not growing up with, a loving family, with a family that's very emotionally disconnected, to just have quite a few hard years in the past, they just wrapped my son and I up with just so much love. And I knew that my life could only get better from here. I knew the type of couple that was going to be raising my daughter. And from that moment, she they instantly loved us. We would talk almost every day, which is like rare, but we grew a bond to feel like real sisters. And I know that my situation is not like everybody else's, but Molly's just the type of person that you want to be around and you want to love. And she's just so lovely. And so when I went to my 40-week checkup, Molly was there with me. After that, she had went to all of my doctor's appointments because she wanted to, not because she had to. We, actually, on one of my birthdays, I think I turned 27, we had my checkup to see what the gender was going to be. So we were waiting in the office, and I was like, no, we can't find out right now. We have to wait till Scott's here. He needs to be here to have the full experience, So she was like, okay. I'm like, well, why don't you and Scott come out to dinner with us later? My brother was taking me to Cheesecake Factory. So I'm like, come with us later, and we'll find out then. We'll open it. Well, once we get to dinner, Scott gives the manager the envelope to make it a surprise. So the man comes back and he's like, if you cut into it and there's nothing inside, then it's a boy. If you cut into it and there's a strawberry inside, it's a girl.
What are you cutting into?
Cheesecake, I'm sorry. I'm literally reliving this whole story like you know what's going on. So cheesecake. So Molly and I cut into it, and there was strawberries inside. So, we were having a girl. And on my 40-week checkup, I had high blood pressure, so they sent us to the labor and delivery. And from that moment on, everything changed. I actually didn't want anybody else in the room with me. Molly stayed with me. I was in labor for 68 hours, and she did not eat because I couldn't eat. She stayed by my side. She was so amazing and just absolutely a blessing. And so when I gave birth, Scott was there to have the full dad experience that I needed him to have. They are not able to conceive naturally. So it was very important for me that from step A to B, they were having the same experience. As much of me as they could. That was very important to me. So he was there to cut the umbilical cord. And so on February 1st, 2019, I gave birth to Claire Sky Stokas. And they have been just continuously loving to my son and I. I want them involved in their life as much as they'll allow me, but we've still remained so close that just a simple text message. That's the beautiful thing with an open adoption about now is technology is everywhere. So it's, very simple if you want to have that type of openness, it's available. But leaving the hospital, I knew that, of course, as much as I loved Scott and Molly, of course it was going to be a little difficult. I wasn't leaving with the baby that I had grown a relationship with for 10 months, and that I have a son who's going to be asking me about him, and he understands as much as his little brain will allow him, And I must have just sat there and just cried for no reason. I'm like, it just won't stop coming. I don't know why it won't stop. She was like, well, honey, you just had a baby and you're going through a lot, and we love you very much, and this baby loves you very much, and she's gonna know who you are, and you'll always be her birth mom, and we thank you and we love you for giving us this gift. And them leaving the hospital that night, I have a lot of different emotions, as you can imagine, but it was very empowering with the struggle that they had went through and struggled with for 5 years of not being able to conceive, and praying to God and going through IVF treatments, and knowing that like her one greatest thing in life that she wanted to do for her and her husband was to have a baby, and she couldn't do it. And just having a different set of obstacles that I may have had, I'm able to have children, and this baby is very loved by me, but I couldn't give this baby the life that it deserves. It was very empowering for me as a woman to know that I created and completed a family.
That's wonderful.
It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And there's no no secrets, which is a beautiful thing. She knows that, Scott and Molly, that's her mom. But she knows the backstory, that she's adopted and I'm her birth mom. So she, doesn't find some papers in an attic 15 years from now and is like, what? I'm adopted? And have this crazy thing that a lot of people do struggle with, with the secrets. And my life would be exponentially different had I just raised that baby, because that baby's mine and I couldn't give it up. And, I actually got asked this morning, how could you give up your baby? I didn't give anything up. I placed my baby in a loving home that I just wasn't able to do at the time. And then, of course, when you say that, they've got tons of questions, so you just go from, the story point A to Z. So, you just sit there for a while talking about it. But I love getting asked questions, and I love telling my story to anybody who will listen. Just my experience, I feel like a rock star. And it's, something special that, generationally, my children in the future will be able to tell their kids, and still have, in a relationship with Claire and her kids, and we'll always be combined. And God has, not taken anything away from me because I, gave up my baby, but we gained a family. We gained Scott and Molly and Claire, and now she has a brother, James, and just a whole big family that we surely didn't have, and they love us unconditionally. And with placing my daughter, I was able to have employment of working as a job coach for adults with disabilities, and I also volunteer my time at ECTLC as an emergency housing case manager. So those opportunities would not have, been such a blessing to me. And, a few years later now, I live on my own. I own my very first car. It's all of these things would not have been possible, and it's absolutely not a loss. No.
I have a question. You said that you were looking at the adoptive parents' profiles.
Yes.
So what information do you receive from that?
So what they do as far as employment, where they live. There's kind of a quick summary that's usually kind of witty or something to catch your eye.
They write a letter.
Yeah, a letter.
Okay.
It's a front and back letter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what they like to do at their spare time, and their family. Gosh, it's been a while.
Yeah, and so it's a dear birth mom or dear birth parent letter telling them about just their lives and their family dynamic. They oftentimes do him about her and her about him, so you get to know what they love about each other. And then there's a 16-page questionnaire attached to that. So quite a bit.
16-page questionnaire.
Yeah. And sometimes birth moms will tell you that they literally look at the pictures and they're like, yes, no, maybe. Or some read every word of all of the profiles. But then they also have access to ask me any questions because I really know each of these couples. I always say I won't offer opinion, but I'll offer fact, you know, and then they pick based off of that. So it's a little bit like you're engaged before your first date, but we would never line up couples to be like interviewed. And then you have a match meeting, and then you decide from there if it still feels like the right fit, and then your relationship begins from there, whether that's at 20 weeks pregnant or from the hospital and the baby was already born. So just kind of depends when birth mom's at that point where she's ready to pick.
What are the requirements for an adoptive parent, or are there any specific requirements working with Adoption San Diego?
Yeah, you have to go through a whole, for all adoptions, you go through a hefty home study process. So all the couples are heavily vetted. And so there's, obviously there has to be certain levels of finances there, stability, but we work with all sorts of different types of people. But the home study process really makes sure that there's not like a criminal background, that there's no health issues that would disqualify you. Like if someone is experiencing like a current health issue that would be terminal or something, obviously that's not going to work. If it's not a like hard and fast rule, but there is kind of an age limit to, because birth moms are doing the math too. Like, okay, how old are you now? How old will child be? The amount of time that you've been married is a big factor. So we want couples to at least have been married for 3 years, because I think birth moms are looking for stability, right? Like if you're married for 30 seconds, they might feel like, well, let's make sure this is like gonna last. A lot. And then birth moms get to really choose. Some birth moms want a religious couple. Some birth moms don't, Some birth moms want different ages, different professions, stay at home mom versus working mom. Like there's all sorts of things. And so we try to create a diverse enough board or group of people that we're working with that birth moms have the appropriate choice for what they're looking for.
And so I'm assuming they would also share if they have other children.
Oh yeah, that would be in the picture. In the, you would know right away in their letter, in their picture, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so fun. Birth moms, when we have support group, like they want different things as well. So that definitely, I just think that it's so interesting for individually and then exactly.
You have there's a birth mom support group?
Yeah, we gather, we do our best to do it once a month. COVID kind of made that interesting. We were gathering at a park at one point, and it was so loud and but we have support group for birth moms whoever, all are invited who have worked through Adoption Center, and we come and we just eat and share and talk, and the women get to be in cry, and everyone gets to be in sisterhood. It's such an empowering time, because in no other place in adoption are birth moms with other women. We just had our Birthmother's day before Mother's Day. We went to Solana Beach, this beautiful restaurant overlooking the ocean, and we had someone come and do like an instructor-led painting activity, and it was like paint therapy.
Yeah, it was fun.
And everyone just got to like be together with people who truly understand them and feel honored, because Mother's Day is hard, right? Like,
yeah.
Or, for some it is more than others. Some who are parenting maybe have that filled in a different way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, for sure.
Yeah,
so
you got 2 days.
Yes, I do.
But that's a hard weekend, so we want to make sure birth mothers are also mothers. And so that's how they're honored on that day. And it's not that we go sit around and talk about adoption all day, right? We
No.
enjoy each other.
Yeah, we do. It is like a sisterhood. But we're we say it's a very elite club that, not everybody's invited to. We love it.
And then we have a Christmas, again, COVID, has put a wrench in some of our plans here, but last year at least, but we have a Christmas party where there might be 400 birth moms, couples, adoptees, family, extended family, all coming together at Skyline Church. And we have Santa come in, so it's like everyone's chance to have their photo op for the Santa that year. And then we also do a summer picnic in Coronado, bringing everyone together, and we have like a clown for the kids and face painting and a jumpy.
Yeah.
So it's really like a big Adoption Center family. And then for the kids and everyone to be able to grow up with other children. Some of these kids have been to 27 picnics, or adults now, come back home from college to come to the picnic. and get to like be with the people who were adopted with them and they grew up with. So that's really cool for, or the younger kids to see a bunch of older kids who were adopted. So we're trying to educate the community also, like to take away some of the stigmas of adoption.
Do you screen the birth moms?
Screen the birth moms, like would I not work with? I mean, I know a lot about them, but I would never not work with someone.
Say for instance, like you have maybe had a birth mom that has been on crack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Would,
and it just depends what couple is open to that.
okay.
Yeah, so couples do a preference sheet that talks about what race they're open to, what level of drug, alcohol, smoking, vaping they're open to. If they're open to twins, everyone's like, I'm open to twins. You are. Everyone's open to twins. I'm like, get in line. And then age, typically we're working in newborn adoptions, but there's certainly times where we might place a toddler or even older. If a birth mom, typically it's someone who tried to place when they were pregnant and were told not to, and then they're like, I should have done this then, and now I'm struggling, and now I'm going to go back to my original plan. And then whether mental health is another thing, or like genetic concerns. So couples write down, and we do a lot of education. We also have support group for adoptive couples every month, so we do a ton of education on race and exposure, because we don't want couples to just, oh, I'm open to anything, la-di-da, like how fun, I just want a baby. No, let's talk about this. Like, are you going to move to a different neighborhood if that's what you need to do? Are you going to learn how to do hair? Are you going to ditch your racist uncle? Like, let's talk about this. Like, we really need to make sure that you are equipped to parent this child. And so then we only present birth moms to couples who are open to that. So a couple's never going to get a call and say, okay, you've been picked and the baby's birth mom has been on drugs for 9 months. And they're like, oh, shoot, I wasn't really hoping for that. They're okay. We knew that was a possibility. We did our research. We feel comfortable, and we trust that we can work through that. So, yeah. So we rely heavily on self-reporting for birth moms. I'd like to think that birth moms feel that they could be honest with me, and typically I think the truth is told because I'm able to tell them the truth is to share the truth, because your baby will be adopted. Like, their couples are open to all sorts of things, and I'm able to kind of say, like, put out the worst, and then it's like, they're like, okay, so that's your baseline. Okay, so I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable. You're not shocked by that, you know, if that's your baseline. And then whatever the couples said that they're comfortable with, we just look at birth mom. Okay, she's this race. She maybe has this mental health, and is that mental health because she was born with it, or is that genetic, or is that she had severe childhood trauma? Like, we kind of work through all those things, and if it's outside of what a couple's preference clearly is, then we might call, or we might send out a letter saying special circumstance, here's what's going on. But I'm not going to call couples every single time there's a birth mom, because couples would just be like in the middle of their workday freaking out, you know. So it's better that you just kind of don't know, and then you get that call one day that you've been picked. Yeah, that's kind of like the behind the scenes process.
I'm the customer, the client services here, and what will be the, for example, if I have a client that wants to give in adoption her baby, do you have immediately after she delivers someone for them, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. And even actually, Sky's daughter's brother was from the hospital baby already born adoption, and Scott and Molly were there 3 hours later, you know, like from the call to like when we like met each other in the elevator and did the adoption right then. So yes, that's a really important thing to know, because sometimes people think, oh shoot, the baby's already born, like it's too late. It's never too late, especially if we know that, again, this isn't common, so I don't want you to think that I'm working with like a bunch of drug addicts, but I'm not, you know, that's just not, that wouldn't be a fair, like example, like of the girls that we're in company with and working with. Sometimes women are choosing that because they're suffering from addiction. That's not always why. But and there could be other reasons why CPS or CWS is there. And so if that's the case, it's really good to make sure you know, you can choose whatever it is, but if your situation doesn't change, and if you don't want your baby to be taken by the system, make sure they know. Call me, call you, whoever, make sure they know that you're going to make an adoption plan. Because if CWS knows that that plan's made, we come first. But if they come first, then we have to do some tricky work to intercept it, and it could cost a couple a tremendous amount of money because they might have to like fight through custody with CPS, you know. So it's always better, and it could be the matter of like one word said by a birth mom, you know.
They place the baby by
Like-
their own, that the CPS take the baby. Right?
If they say I have an adoption plan, they'll say, okay, make that plan. We're right here. We're gonna kind of watch, but make your calls, make this happen.
Okay.
Baby's not leaving the hospital without something happening. So yes, we can do last minute placements. More often, we're a woman's making a plan during her pregnancy, but sometimes she does need to. I hope it's gonna work. I hope it's gonna work. I hope it's gonna work, and nothing changes.
Yeah.
You know, 3 months later, the guy didn't come around. She didn't get the job. Like the apartment didn't come through. Whatever it is. So sometimes she might still be in the same position. So I always just make sure women know, if you need me, I'm here. Great, you chose parenting. Let me call around and help you get stuff for your apartment and for your diaper. I'll collect diapers for women who thought they were choosing adoption and went to parenting. But then they know I'm here if they need me.
Yeah.
But the women who you're talking to in in the center who come in, it's just to be able to make sure she feels empowered to know that she has options, you know. And we have to listen to what women are saying. If she's saying, I don't think I can parent, and we're saying, yeah, you can, you have to, because you can't have an abortion. That's not really fair. Because here, what joy in not taking the life of your child, giving life to your child. Like I always encourage her, look, you're already making the best choice by just choosing life. Now let's, but it doesn't have to end there. Now let's determine what kind of life you want for your child, and to share. I know someone. I heard a birth mom give this amazing presentation of her adoption story. Sarah can just talk to you, no pressure, and there never is. No pressure at all, but you can just learn about it. Then you can feel educated on all of your options and what woman doesn't want to hear. And then you can make the choice that's best for you because you were empowered by options. You know, like use that language of be empowered, and then you make the choice that's best for you. Sarah can take you out to coffee, and that's what's kind of nice. I know you guys have like different rules. I don't have any of those rules. So I could literally like drive down from my office, pick a girl up, put her in my car, and go to Starbucks, you know, or whatever, meet her across the street, and just have that like.
Right?
We can't drive them anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think I don't.
So
I
what
wish.
does it look like for when someone says, okay, I'm thinking about adoption, so you have that conversation with them. Okay, so now they want to do an adoption plan. What's the process for the birth mother?
So we need her to be at least 20 weeks pregnant. The reason I do that, not that doesn't matter for you guys. You would call me immediately if she's 6 weeks pregnant. You would call me because, like, I will call her and we'll just chat every week, and we'll just and I'll take her to her appointments. I'll send her gas money if that's what she needs. We'll just get to know each other and work on things together and sort through things. The reason though we wait until 20 weeks is because, and this is kind of where like our ethics come in. I don't like that other organizations in the country would just like swoop on someone in their moment of crisis. Oh, you want to do an adoption? Here's a bunch of profiles. Make your decision, and because that's going to be like a 50% of back out. I want women to journey through their pregnancy, have people start asking her those hard questions, have her feeling the baby kick. Ideally going to a 20-week anatomy ultrasound. That's a powerful ultrasound when you're seeing every single piece of, bit of your baby, like, and just really knowing like there is a human growing inside of me, and am I able to place this child for adoption? And so that's really intentional. I just don't want to match too early before she has time to sort through with my support, certainly, or with all of whoever's support. I want her to have a team of support. But I really want to make sure that she didn't feel pressured into that choice. And so once she is sure, absolutely, as sure as one can be, right? Like birth moms will say, I will always say, 1 to 10, how sure are you? And sometimes they'll say, emotionally I'm a 6, but like my mind is at a 10. Like what I know I need to do is at a 10. No one ever is like, ooh, I hope I get pregnant and I'm in a position to place my baby for adoption. No one likes to be in this, like where you end up. There's joy in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And especially, you know, as a woman not having the guilt of knowing you had an abortion, you know, because that's always going to stick with you. But like the joy of placing yes in the moment, it's very difficult. But as you watch your child grow and see the love from their parents and then their birth families, it's like, how much love can your child get? Like it's just an endless supply of just so much joy and love and peace, you know, not having that guilt walk around like a dark cloud your whole life. It's so sad, and I feel like not enough, you know, men and women have the opportunity to like have information on open adoption, you know, so it's a beautiful thing.
Well, and I like want to use my words carefully here when I say this, but I think you'll understand what I mean. Like the same results, for the same reasons women want to abort, many of those can be accomplished through an adoption, right? Like, I don't feel like I'm ready. I don't feel like I'm financially stable. I don't feel that my family would be okay with it, even. Whatever those reasons are, but then with that, instead of regret, you get the joy of choosing that life. So that's a careful thing to communicate, you know, but it's like, especially sometimes, as we know, women who are in crisis don't always know they're pregnant right away. They're like, oh, it must have been those burgers. I was eating a lot of burgers last week. Or, you know, like they're going through stress. And I hear women say all sorts of things. I assumed it was because of this. Like so many different reasons, because we do a lot of pretty last minute adoptions. And not just adoptions. Last minute, I knew I was pregnant. And so sometimes you're like, just hang on for 20 more weeks. Like, it's a blink of an eye in the grand scheme of your life to give generations, like what you were talking about. I mean, we're talking about like changing generational lines, like for this just beautiful, like the change that can be made through one birth mom or one woman's decision. So once she gets to the point where she's ready, then we present her those profiles. So at this point, I know her race of birth father. I'm asking a lot of questions about birth father too. We don't need to get into that. But I'm asking a lot of questions. Is he going to have a problem with this adoption? Is his mom going to have a problem? Does it matter if his mom's going to have a problem? No, not legally, but influence-wise, yes. You know, we sometimes joke. It's not really funny, but in adoption, that there's like nothing scarier than a birth father's mom, you know, because it's like you're not, no way, not my golden son, like, and so she'll sometimes be like, I'm gonna march you down to that office, I'm gonna hand in the paperwork, which is kind of helpful for us because it just shows that mom's trying to do it. And in private adoption, opposite of foster care, the only two people who matter are birth mom and birth dad, and there's some legalities that aren't really important for you to understand. I mean, if a woman calls me and says, I'm with this guy, he's a lawyer, I live in his house, he's great, he's taken me to all my appointments, and he's lovely, I just really don't like him. Well, you got to figure that out. I'm not doing your adoption, you know? Like, I'm not trying to take babies away from good men, obviously. But in a more typical scenario, it's, he asked me to have an abortion, I wouldn't. He promised me the world, he's disappeared ever since. He hasn't provided for me physically, financially, or emotionally. If those components aren't there, he doesn't meet the burden of a presumed father, so he doesn't have the legal ability to, he can fight, but he doesn't have like the legal ability to win custody, if you will, of the child. But we want to make sure we like don't have any surprises. So we're really talking through all of those things. So finding out just about her, then we know who we can present her to. She picks her couple, and you kind of heard how that process goes. They build that relationship. COVID's really been difficult with doctor's appointments. Even this morning, even though things seem to be lifting, I just had a couple who sat in their car from 8:45 until noon waiting for their birth mom to go through like all of her appointments that she had this morning because they wouldn't let her in. And then they found out the gender of the baby in their car.
Aww.
You know, like, and she was like, birth mom was so devastated. She was like, I wanted you to be there. So they're booking like a vanity ultrasound somewhere. But it's really cute, these stories that have emerged through COVID of people literally just waiting in the parking lot, just so the birth mom knows, like, we can't go in, but we're here. Like, we're as here as we can be, you know. And like, there's manis and petties and Target runs for maternity clothes, and it's really cool. I don't know if I'm just like so blessed with the birth moms I work with, but it's so not financial. People assume that a lot too. Yes, there is an amount of birth mom expenses that we ask that couples save for appropriate expenses, like co-payments, maternity clothes. If your birth mom is on bed rest because she's having your baby, you know, and she can't go to her serving job or whatever, you're going to help pay for that. But I was just with a birth mom yesterday. We were at lunch doing her hospital plan, and she was so funny. She was like, oh my gosh, like, I almost died. I invited my adoptive mom to go get like nails done just for like some girl bonding time, and then she paid, and I was like, I would never have invited you somewhere if I knew you were going to pay. She was like mortified, and her adoptive mom's like, of course I'm going to pay. Like, of course I'm going to pay. And they like got in this whole thing, and then she like tells me about it, and she was like turning red at lunch. She was like, I can't believe she paid for me. And I just love that, because what, like, it just is like so her heart to be like mortified that the person who she's blessing her baby with paid for her nails, and she like was like so like couldn't believe it, you know. So we really, and it's partly how we handle things at Adoption Center, like, we really stay away from the financial talk, because I never want a birth mom choosing adoption, this forever decision, over some short-term financial assistance. So if that's the case, I'm like, I'll send you to you guys, or, you know, we'll get you those things. We don't need to do adoption to help with some short-term like finances. So yeah, that's kind of how the process goes, and birth moms get to choose whatever level of openness feels comfortable for her. It's not co-parenting, so that's kind of something that's good to differentiate. It's not that, you know, birth mom's like hanging out once a week or showing up and saying, I don't like how you did my daughter's hair or something. I mean, you know, you might. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, actually, Molly is like, maybe you can come teach me how to do her hair, because my daughter's mixed and my son is mixed, so I'm used to like braiding and stuff. So she's like, oh, if you come over here and do her hair. And I haven't yet, but you know, like, we're both really, really busy. So when our schedules allow, we get to meet up. I'm actually going to meet up with them on the 4th. My sister's coming with her 3 kids, and so like my son and I will be there. So we all get to go and have some like sister time and let the kids run and, you know, spend that time together. And so obviously my particular adoption is very open, but that's because we both want it, not more, you know, one more than the other. And so,
and all the couples I work with, though, like I said, are open to that but we really respect a birth mom might say that just wouldn't be good for me. Maybe she didn't tell anyone in her family. Like, whatever the reason is, or some like what you thought initially, like, maybe I want that yearly update. I would say most common probably, birth moms probably end up seeing their child at least in those first few years. Birth moms never move on, but they sometimes move forward. They might get married. They might move out of the state. They might just get into a place where they're trusting their couple. I mean, they trust from the beginning, but they're like, my kid's good. Like, I did what I made this choice. And sometimes it's in the couples who are calling me and they're like, I thought I signed up for open, and now, like, you know, she's so busy and she's hard to get a hold of or whatever. But I would say it's very common, like 3 to 4 times a year hangouts, weekly to monthly text. Very common.
Now, what do you do if someone says that they don't want to have an open adoption, they just want to
Birth mom or couple?
birth mom?
That's totally fine. I have a gal right now who I'm working with who really does not want. She's really loving getting to know her couple now, and at this time anticipates not wanting future contact. She just thinks for her it wouldn't be. Well, and it's a secret, you know. So, but she's like loving this time of pregnancy, getting to know him. So it's open in that way, and her couple is just soaking in every second with her, right going home and journaling like every
getting
facial
to know the
expression she
mother while
has.
they have the opportunity.
Yeah, because they
That's so
want to be able
sweet.
to tell their child like, oh my gosh, you just made a face just like your birth mom, or you just you did this thing, or we know because they like wrote up a questionnaire to ask all these questions about like. I mean, it's
Wow.
in some legal paperwork, but they wanted to know
Uh-huh.
like favorite sport, favorite subject, favorite color, favorite food, you know, just so they could have it in the scrapbook. So couples really cherish and honor. I mean, you know, my couples really cherish and honor their birth moms, and genuinely, it's not like oh you gave me this, so it's like, can I adopt her too? Is a very common phrase that we hear.
Yeah. Scott and Molly said that about my son and I,
Yeah.
for sure. Claire's birthday was February 1st, and Molly had messaged me a few days later, and she was like, I was just reading over my journals from when we were in the hospital together, and I was just bawling. Like, she's like, it's so sweet, and gosh, I just thank you so much, and we love you.
So it really is that way. And I just don't work with couples who I think it would be a different way, you know? Like if couples just don't seem interested, that's fine, but that's just not, I want that option for the birth moms that we work with.
So all of your couples, it's for the couples, it's an open adoption, and for the birth mothers, though, it's what they feel comfortable
Couples
with.
have
as
to
far
be
as-
open to fully open adoption and have
Okay.
to be really educated on what that looks like, and it's a total crapshoot of what they're gonna have. And it's funny because couples are allowed to come to me confused about what that looks like, but through education, they either need to feel comfortable with it or work somewhere else. But like I said, it's oftentimes couples who are like scared about it at first, get to know what it is, realize their birth mom's not to be feared, and then want it, and then sometimes don't get it, and they're like, man.
Yeah.
Because I think you realize, like, I love the example that you gave, Sky. Like, you know, 15-year-olds aren't meant to find a letter in the attic.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
secrets aren't healthy. And you want to be able to, like, you know, in Claire's case, who has this gorgeous blonde, like, afro, and her mom's hair is, like, straight and just right, like no movement.
She actually looks a lot like Scott.
yeah, she does look like totally her like kind of blonde dad. It's so funny.
Yeah.
And but she needs to be able to be like, why is my hair so curly and your hair is straight? And if Molly was like, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Her kids gonna be like, oh, we don't, let me poke, like, you know, or that can make a child feel really uncomfortable. But instead they're like, what do you mean? Have you seen birth mama's hair? Let's FaceTime her. Like, let's look in the scrapbook. We just saw her last week. Whatever it is.
Exactly.
Like, that's a comfortable answer. And for a kid, it's like, okay.
It's so funny that she would mention that too, because we actually just celebrated my son's 9th birthday close to a restaurant close to where they live in Mission Beach. And she was telling, Claire was had just done like a presentation report for her preschool class about, you know, how she's adopted and like these little pictures of what I look like and her brother, and it was just so sweet. So she comes to dinner and she's totally bashful and just like hiding behind her mom, and I'm like, what's up, girl? And Scott was there, and he was like, we were just like talking about stuff from like the past and when I was pregnant. And I was like, gosh, like sometimes you make a face and like she looks just like you, the way that God orchestrated for, you know, her to look so much like you, like you wouldn't question it. And he was like, yeah, the running joke in our family is, what were you doing at this time and this time? Like, it's inappropriate, but that's just how we talk. Like, we're really funny like that. And then when they walk home, Molly was videoing Claire, and she was the whole way just talking, yeah, my birth mom, Sky, and my brother, Cannon, and just talking the whole way home. And I'm like, I didn't get none of that. But it's so sweet. Just, she had sent me the pictures of her little presentation, and I'm like, oh, I'm crying just to see her talk like that. And
Just like normalize adoption.
Yeah.
And be, she's 3 sharing things like this, and so that will forever just be comfortable. And she was being rocked by Molly as a newborn, you know, saying, you grew in birth mommy Sky's tummy, and she loved you so much that she chose us to be, mommy's tummy was broken, and she chose us to be your forever family, but you're doubly loved, and you're chosen, and you're God's child, most importantly, and all these things that just, so then it's never like a thing, because she just always knew.
Yeah, so normalized. And, you know, even though even for my son being the age he was when I knew that I was going to be placing, having those conversations with him as well just became normal in our house as well. So it's a beautiful thing, just on both sides.
So the openness, do you have to like come to sit with the couple and come to an agreement that this is how we want it? I mean, how does that work?
Well, we would never have a couple and a birth mom sit together and discuss that, just because I would want birth mom to be able to share her truth and not feel like, I don't know what they want, so I'm going to adjust it based on what I think they want, So there is something called, it's a legal document. There is something that if we felt a need, that we could actually have like a legal document agreeing to X amount of visits, FaceTimes, whatever that looked like a year that everyone agreed upon. We probably do that less than any other organization because of like the quality and just transparency and education of the couples who I'm working with. That oftentimes birth moms are like, well, I don't want a contract, and then I don't want my couple being like, oh, we were going to invite you to the soccer game, but we already saw you 4 times, so I don't know if that's like a breach of our contract, because that's like the vision, that you're at a game in your birth mom's area, and you're like, hey, sorry, last minute, but can you guys come down real quick and like cheer her on? That's like the ideal situation. So that's more often how it is, but yes, there can be a contract if any reason we feel that there should be, or if a birth mom wants it. If a birth mom wanted it, she'd have it in a second. But how it works really is that I have these meetings separately with birth mom, have them separately with couples, so everyone can be honest about what they want. And sometimes a birth mom says, oh, I would love to see the child once a week. Okay, well then we have to have that discussion. That's more like a custody type thing, or that wouldn't be appropriate, or they need to be able to fully bond. And do you see anyone once a week in your life? Like, no, well they can't,
Right.
So we navigate through a lot of things, and sometimes birth moms are like, oh, I just didn't even know. I didn't know what was like the appropriate. Sometimes you just don't know until you're educated. But we come together, and then oftentimes it just ebbs and flows throughout the years, and there's some rules to it. Like if a birth mom is choosing to fall into bad behaviors or something that would impact the child negatively, of course you don't have like some couples are like, I don't care what she's doing, she's birth mom, and until it's really affecting my kids, like I wouldn't. Some feel that way. Others are like, birth mom's on drugs, we can't be around that. So you still have to be parents and like make appropriate decisions for what is best. So it's not like, but no birth mom, right, Sky? Like no birth mom that through support groups would ever want to be around her child if she was using drugs.
Oh no.
Like, so that kind of just takes care of itself. I've never had a birth mom who even wants to come around. She's embarrassed. She's not proud of herself, and she wants her child to be proud of her. But even other things, like if she starts dating a dangerous guy, like they don't need to come to dinner. Like there's just like appropriate boundaries, like there is with anyone else, of what that looks like.
Thank you.
What happens if you're going through this process and the birth mother decides that she doesn't want to do the adoption plan anymore?
Yeah,
Decides to parent.
Then she parents, and of course it's heartbreaking for a couple, but we try to educate. Like we want successful adoptions, and part of it being successful is that's what everyone wanted. And it doesn't mean, like we've talked about this theme, like joy and sorrow can live right here in adoption, right? Doesn't mean it's like all rainbows and butterflies, but if she chooses to parent, my favorite thing is when couples are able to say, then that's what it's meant to be, and we're okay with that. But it's devastating. It's like a loss. Sometimes it's like a death, depending on how far along in the process they were, depending on if baby went home with couple. That I am thankful to say has never happened in my almost 3 years of running Adoption Center, that a baby has gone home with a couple. We have had pretty last minute. We've had one last minute back out of an adoption, and it's really hard, and then when the couple is ready and feels comfortable to start working again and being presented again, then they get the baby that they were meant to, and they're like, that loss is still hard, but it needed to happen because this was meant to be our baby, and she was meant to be our birth mom, so there's a lot of like faith and trust in the process that your baby's there. We just don't know if baby's born yet, or or I mean, it's kind of a crazy thing in adoption because couples are waiting right now whose birth mom's somewhere pregnant and they don't know that they're like having a baby in however many months.
Or before they get pregnant, but she's out there.
Yeah, she's out there. Yeah.
Do
That's
you
how it works.
offer support for children that maybe they?
For the children, yeah, if there's tons of specific counselors for that. That's not specifically like if a couple calls me and says, hey, my child is expressing this or that, we direct in in the appropriate place. That's not like what that gets further out of what I'm equipped to do. So I don't have like,
You refer them.
but we would refer, and we have social workers that we work exclusively with who I would refer directly to them.
That brings up something that I just made me think about. What about like your son, the children of the birth mother who they already have? Has there been any issues where you had to work with the child or refer for that child to talk to somebody about?
Well, we navigate really clearly. I mean, that's going to be really individual based on. Typically, if a woman's making an adoption plan, life wasn't say beforehand, right?
Correct. I'm like,
Yeah.
I was gonna say for me specifically, we have had a really hard last few years. So even before I found out that I was pregnant, we had a really hard few years before that. So my son has been seeking counseling probably since my adoption process. Yeah, he sees a counselor often, and then I'm still on the waiting list for Boys and Girls Club. So I mean, but that's also just part of my parenting and knowing that I need to be proactive with my mental health. So it's important for me to be proactive with my sons. So I think it's just
because of your being a great mom to have
individualized.
that.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't force, like she
Yeah.
does those
Right,
things.
yeah.
I couldn't like every birth mom be like, hey, you need to make sure that you are bringing your other children to
Yeah,
therapy
totally
or-
individualized.
Yeah.
But with that, we do offer a lot of education on what that looks like. So you're having the conversation, you know, mommy is growing a baby, but mommy's growing it for someone else, and you are my forever child, right? There's conversations with Canon, like, you are my forever baby. You are not going anywhere. So there's certainly some key.
I haven't heard that in so long, and I would say that to my son every night, and that just like made me choke up.
Yeah, because there could be like the biggest concern for a child is going to be like, wait, could that happen to me? So
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
what I was
important.
thinking.
Yeah, they know that that's not going to be in their situation, and they're still, you know, your relative, and there could be some issues with how they grew up versus how the child grew up on either side, right? Like on either side, and that just depends on how the child feels about that. We have a couple who she was really upset when her birth mom moved to Georgia because birth mom has 4 kids. She has 2 of hers, so 5 and 6, like the 5th and 6th. And she was like, at least when we were all in the same city, there was differences, but now the discrepancy is so great for where she moved to. It was like not a good area. And so it was interesting, like the adoptive couple was sad because she had loved her other 4 children so much that she was like really sad one that they were leaving, but she was like, now they're going to live opposite lives, where at least when we were here, like we could pour into them and birthdays and throw them parties and, you know, different things. So it's obviously it's in some cases a greatly different life that will be lived. But the whole point of adoption is that birth mom gets to pour everything into, if she has other children, you know, gets to pour everything into that child rather than being stretched even thinner or not being able to kind of get to a point that she needs to be successful for the child. And you're like, whether it's foster care or you're adopting, like we always say, you have to take care of, social workers will say, you have to take care of the child who's in your home. Like that's the child you have to take care of first, you know. And so then you need to make the appropriate plan for the next child. So.
And once a couple is approved, how long a range is of the process to get the baby?
With COVID, it's been a little bit different because less people were getting pregnant with everything being shut down. And so we have sometimes average wait times of 9 months and sometimes of 2 years. Right now we're looking at more like 2 years. And some of it is greatly dependent on the couple and how quickly they get their stuff together. So there's like right now we're on a wait list of when we would even accept a couple to an orientation, and we're highly vetting. I mean, we always are, but we're like being pretty particular at this time because we have to be with just there's been a huge surge in couples wanting to adopt. They're working from home more. They're not vacationing. They're like reflecting on their lives more. And then on the opposite side, schools, bars, restaurants, coffee shops, meetup places are shut down. So people aren't getting pregnant at the same rate. So then once a couple like gets to a point where they sign up with us, ball's kind of in their court because they have to write their Dear Birth Mom letter, which sometimes takes couples 2 months and sometimes it takes them 9 months. Like it just to kind of sort through their paperwork and their home study. So just dependent on each couple.
16 pages.
Well, that's like an answer. I mean, that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's a questionnaire, but the letter is just like a one-page double-sided. But I would say the average is like 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. Again, dependent on a lot of like. It's really the couple. Birth moms are so sweet. They're like, what are you looking for in your couple? I just want a good couple. I'm like, okay, they're all that. Anything more specific? And then couples, I could say this in front of Sky, but couples are like, well, this. Like, they're typically the ones who have like more
like nit.
Yeah, like
picky-ish.
strict. And birth moms, I just love birth moms' answers. There's always, I just want a good couple. Like, yeah. Any other questions?
I think we covered a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much for
Yes,
having us.
so thank you, ladies. Yes, you did a wonderful job in sharing about adoption from the birth mother side and from the adoptive parent side. And I just love the story that you shared,
Thank
Sky, and how just the love between you and the family, how you're gaining a family, not losing a child because she is still part of you, part of your life, and that's beautiful. So. Thank you. Just so one more thing then, actually. When we do have somebody who comes, we see that they are in a position where adoption might be the better option for them. We're going to provide them with your phone number.
And I'm going to give you my cell phone number. 'Cause
Okay.
Just the easiest access. And you could kind of text, hey, can I call you?
Okay. And that's basically it. You take it from there. And
Any information that you're allowed to give is helpful, of course. Like, hey, don't bring up, like anything that you could kind of help me with that's appropriate, or what kind of is she really emotional? Is she sure of this? Does she just want information?
So should we typically call you or have her call you?
It's really best if you if she calls from here.
Okay.
I wouldn't say, hey, when you leave here, call Sarah.
Yeah.
As you know, right? Like, because
card will go in the pocket and probably not come out.
Yeah. I have birth moms who call who say, oh gosh, you answered. And I'm like, hello? Yes? And they're like, okay. I was going to hang up if you didn't answer. Like that first point, it's really important. You're kind of playing games where you're like, if they answer, I'll talk. If not, I will never call again, So that's why I like when people kind of text first and let me know it's coming and I could get to a place to give her my full attention. It's not that you, like, if she brings up adoption, you're like, oh my gosh, well, I can't, like, I need to just send you to Sarah right away. Like, I hope you feel through
talk
this.
about what an open adoption looks like, or
sort of looks like. You feel comfortable with. Like, I know that adoptions are open. I don't know all the details, but, like, I know that they're open. They're not like what they used to be. I know that you can have a relationship. What if you could, what if your child could always know you, could always know this beautiful choice you made? You can always have a forever relationship, and you could handpick the couples. Those are safe things to say. I wouldn't get into like, but the birth father or the father. That's when you're like, I don't have the answers to those things. So whatever you feel equipped, and I hope after today you feel more equipped. Because what if she's really built a relationship and feels most comfortable with you too? So you kind of want to balance that, like. Have I been working with her for 3 months? Is this her 5th visit here? And, like, I have the rapport. So you would just kind of gauge it out. And you could also call me and say, like, can you help me script this? Like, I think she does feel most comfortable with me, but can you kind of help me navigate through what I expect this conversation at 2 o'clock to be like?
Okay.
So if and when I get to start Embrace Grace at the church, do I refer, if I get get a young lady that wants that, considering that,
Mhm.
do I send her to
No, directly to
you?
yeah,
Okay.
because you don't want to like just allow even more space for her to
Okay.
not feel comfortable to just
Directly to you. Okay.
All right. Well, I think we've had all of our questions answered. So thank you very much, ladies. I want to just give you an applause.
Thank you.